I have to take my time on this because this is a bombshell part of it. Now, I know some of the Twitter files that have been put out there, some are more, let's say, some are better than others, as far as the good stuff, the stuff that, we all thought in some cases you could prove, but there just wasn't a lot of things that were concrete about it. So the Twitter files part 7 tell a story of what it is that I have been saying of this, or rather the question that I want to answer when the Twitter files came. And that was this: what's the government's involvement? What is the state's involvement in this whole ordeal, whether it be with the censoring aspects or any of that? Is this, which I knew it wasn't, a private company acting on its own accord, or were they being extorted, or were they being influenced? Were they being paid by people that work from the government, and that was influencing the policy? Michael Schellenberger, part 7, the FBI, and the Hunter Biden laptop. How the FBI and intelligence community discredited factual information about Hunter Biden's foreign business dealings, both after and before the New York Post revealed the contents on his laptop on October 14, 2020. You have to remember that story. If you're not familiar with Twitter, I'm not going to give you the entire rundown, but that was a story that was actively oppressed by the company. And basically all of it, for the most part, turned out to be true. So you had an active breaking story that may have been, let's say, I don't want to say incriminating. I guess you could say incriminating. The son of the now president, Biden. However, they purposely ran interference. Let's just say that. In Twitter File 6, we saw the FBI relentlessly seek to exercise influence over Twitter, including over its content and data. You can go read part 6 if you want to. In 7, we present evidence pointing to an organized effort by representative of the intelligence community aimed at senior executives in news and social media companies to discredit leaked information about Hunter Biden before and after it was published. The story begins in 2019 of December when a Delaware computer store owner named John Paul Mac Isaac contacts the FBI about a laptop that Hunter Biden had left with him. The FBI issues a subpoena for and takes Hunter Biden's laptop. Evidence right there by the New York Post. By August 2020, Mac Isaac still had not heard back from the FBI, even though he had discovered evidence of criminal activity, and so he emails Rudy Giuliani, who was under FBI surveillance at the time in early October. Giuliani gives it to the New York Post. Now, shortly before 7 p.m. on October 13th, Hunter Biden's lawyer, George Messiers, emails JP Mac Isaac. Hunter and Messiers had just learned from the New York Post that its story about the laptop had been published the next day. And here's the information, the emailed information. At 9:22, FBI Special Agent Elvis Chan sends 10 documents to Twitter's then head of site integrity, Yoel Roth, who I believe is gone in hiding, through Teleporter, a one-way communications channel from the FBI to Twitter. So they have Teleporter that goes directly, it's communication that goes from this criminal organization known as the FBI, but it's under sort of federal umbrella, going straight to Twitter. So we know they're off rip, and we learned that. We've known that. And it's not necessarily unusual that Twitter communicates with the FBI. Other social media communicates directly with the FBI. Okay? The next day, October 14th, the New York Post runs its explosive story revealing the business dealings of President Joe Biden's son, Hunter. Every single fact in it was accurate. And this is the important part. When that story broke, we know that it was getting suppressed. You couldn't share it. People were being banned because of it. And it was factual information that broke. Now, of course, the people that often defend, let's say, the president, people that tend to lean to that side of things, wanted to present it as if it was a nothing burger, despite them the factual information being factual information. And yet, within hours, Twitter and other social media companies censored the New York Post article, preventing it from spreading and, more importantly, undermining its credibility in the minds of many Americans. Why is that? What exactly happened? This is where it gets juicy. And I'm going to take my time. This will be a longer video. Matt Taibbi described the debate inside Twitter over its decision to censor wholly accurate article. And that was in the original Twitter files, if I'm not mistaken. Since then, we have discovered new info that points to an organized effort by the intel community to influence Twitter, but not just Twitter, other platforms. First, it's important to understand that Hunter Biden earned tens of millions of dollars in contracts with foreign businesses, including ones linked to China's government, for which Hunter offered no real work. Here's an overview if you want to go check that. We've covered that over on Blaze as well. And yet, during all of 2020, the FBI and law enforcement agencies repeatedly primed Yoel Roth to dismiss the reports of Hunter Biden's laptop as a Russian hack and leak operation. This is from a sworn declaration by Roth given in December of 2020. It says right here, during these weekly meetings, the federal law enforcement agencies communicated that they expected hack and leak operations by state actors might occur period shortly before the 2020 presidential election, likely in October. I was told these meetings that the intelligence community expected the individuals associated with political campaigns would be subject to hacking attacks, and that material obtained during those hacks will likely be dismissed over social media platforms, including Twitter. These expectations of hack and leak operations were discovered throughout 2020. I also learned, again, this is coming from the whole Yoel Roth declaration, these meetings, that there were rumors of hack and leak operation would involve Hunter Biden. So we got the heads up from the criminals. They did the same to Facebook, according to CEO Mark Zuckerberg. The FBI basically came to us, and I remember this was on Joe Rogan. He flat out submitted. Let's listen to him himself.
The FBI,
Mark Zuckerberg.
The background here is the FBI, I think, basically came to us, some folks on our team. It was like, hey, just so you know, like, you should be on high alert. There was we thought that there was a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election. We have it on notice that basically there's about to be some kind of dump of that's similar to that. The background.
So he's basically saying the same thing that you are raw. So what that does, if you put two and two together, we see that, well, there was communication by way of the FBI or federal agencies that were saying or telling this to other social media accounts that, hey, there's something that's about to happen. Be on high alert. The FBI warnings of a Russian attack, hack and leak operation relating to Hunter Biden based on any new intel? No, they weren't. Through our investigations, we did not see any similar competing intrusions to what happened in 2016, and that's admitted by the FBI agent known as Elvis Chan in November. So it's cut and dry there. Indeed, Twitter executives repeatedly reported very little Russian activity. September 2020, Twitter told the FBI it had removed 345 largely inactive accounts linked to the previous coordinated Russian hacking attempts. They had little reach and low follower accounts. In fact, Twitter debunked false claims by journalists of foreign influence on its platform. And there's examples of that. Now, after the FBI asked about the WAPO story on alleged foreign influence and pro-Trump tweet, Twitter's Roth says the article makes a lot of insinuations, but we saw no evidence that was the case here. And in fact, a lot of strong evidence pointing in the other direction. It's not the first time that Twitter's Roth has pushed back against the FBI. In January 2020, Roth resisted FBI efforts to get Twitter to share data outside of the normal search warrant process. Pressure had been growing. We have sustained, and you see these emails right here, we have sustained, if uncoordinated, effort by the IC, that's the intelligence community, to push us to share more info and change our API policies. They are probing and pushing everywhere they can. So we know that the federal government, in some way, be it their little agency, are trying to influence these private social media companies. Time and time again, FBI asks Twitter for evidence of foreign influence, and Twitter responds that they aren't finding anything worth reporting. Despite Twitter's pushback, the FBI repeatedly requests information from Twitter that Twitter has already made clear they will not share outside of normal legal channels. So they're saying, hey, we're not finding anything. There's no warrant, okay, as well. And we're not just going to give you information just for the sake of giving you information. Though, of course, the FBI, as the criminal organization that it is, continues to push. The FBI's Elvis Chan arranges for temporary top secret clearances for Twitter executives so that FBI can share information about threats for the upcoming election. On August 11, 2020, the FBI's Chan shares information that Twitter's Roth, Yoel Roth it is, relating to the Russian hacking organization APT28 through the FBI secure one-way communications channel Teleport. Recently, Yoel Roth told Carl Swisher that he had been primed to think that the Russian hacking group APT28 before news of Hunter Biden laptop came out. When it did, Roth said it set off every single one of my finely tuned APT28 hack and leap campaign alarm bells. Now, in August 2020, FBI's Chan asked Twitter, does anyone there have secret clearance? When someone mentions Jim Baker, Chan responds, I don't know. I forgot him, and I claim, given that Chan's job is to monitor Twitter. Not to mention that they worked together at the FBI. All right. Who is Jim Baker? He's a former general counsel of the FBI from 2014 to 2018. We've talked about him. And one of the most powerful men in the U.S. intel community. Baker has moved in and out of the government for 30 years, serving stints at CNN, Bridgewater, yada, yada. He's about as, stinking a high hill as it gets. General counsel of the FBI, Baker, played a central role in making the case internally for an investigation of Donald Trump. So you have a guy that obviously is he's worked with federal agencies. He stinks to high hill. We know that he has his own personal bias, and we've seen that in action. Yet he's been working with Twitter. Baker was the only senior FBI exec involved in Trump investigation to go to Twitter. Don Burton, the former department chief of staff to FBI, James Comey, who initiated the investigation of Trump, joined Twitter in 2019 as director of strategy. So you have these people who were working with the FBI, working for and with Twitter. As of 2020, there are so many former FBI employees, Boo alumni, working at Twitter that they had created their own private Slack channel and a crib sheet to onboard new FBI arrivals. This stinks, bro. I'm going to tell you straight like that. This stinks. So they have all of these people, including Jim Baker, former FBI agents, bro. Like, you couldn't make a movie any better than what's happening here of basically the infiltration and snaky activity by way of the federal government collaborating by demand, by extortion, or even voluntarily, I'm sure in some cases, with a private institution. Buddha Twitter translation chart, adding Don, and now they have this list where they sit up here and communicate with each other. Like, hey, oh yeah, I worked with the federal government too. Jesus Christ. Efforts continue to influence Twitter's Yoel Roth. In September 2020, Roth participated in an Aspen Institute tabletop exercise on a potential hack and dump operation relating to Hunter Biden. The goal was to shape how the media covered it. Wow. And how social media carried it. The organizer, former CEO of NPR, Vivian Schiller, former head of news at Twitter. Man, this just stinks. Former general manager of New York Times and former chief digital officer of NBC News. Attendees include also Facebook's, so they were in on it too, head of security policy and the top national security reporters for New York Times and WAPO. By mid-September 2020, Chan and Roth had set up an encrypted messaging network so employees from Twitter and FBI could communicate. They also agreed to create a virtual war room for all internet industry plus FBI and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. FBI's Laura Demlow, who heads a foreign influence task force, and Elvis Chan request to give classified briefing for Jim Baker without any of the Twitter staff, such as Yoel Roth, present. Sounds like infiltration to me. It isn't clearly violative of our hacked materials policy, nor is it clearly violation of anything else, but as this feels like somewhat a subtle leak operation. In response to Roth, Baker reportedly insists that Hunter Biden materials were either faked, hacked, or both. And in violation of the Twitter policy, Baker does so over email and in Google Doc on October 14th and 15th. Wow. And yet it's inconceivable. Baker believed that Hunter Biden emails were either faked or hacked. The New York Post had included a picture of the receipt signed by Hunter Biden. And FBI subpoena showed the agency had taken possession of the laptop in 2019. As for the FBI, it likely would have taken a few hours for it to confirm that the laptop had belonged to Hunter Biden. Indeed, it only took a few days for journalists to prove it. Well, we knew that. By 10 a.m., a Twitter execs had bought in into a wild hack and dump story. The suggestion from experts, which rings true, Yoel Roth is involved in this. You can see the email right there. Is there was a hack that happened separately, and they loaded the hack material on the laptop that magically appeared at a. So that's what they ran with. Basically, they hacked, loaded it on that laptop or whatever, and then it's basically trying to get away with playing both sides of it. It's like, how can we incriminate it, basically justifying suppressing the story even if the information is legitimate? Well, you can say that information was obtained illegally. At 3:38 that same day, October 14th, Baker arranges a phone conversation with Matthew J. Perry in the Office of General Counsel to the FBI. The influence operation persuaded Twitter execs that Biden's laptop did not come from a whistleblower. One linked a Hill article based on a WAPO article from October 15th, which falsely suggested that Giuliani's leak of the laptop had something to do with Russia. There's evidence that the FBI agents have warned elected officials of foreign influence with the primary goal of leaking the information in news media. This is a political dirty trick used to create the perception of impropriety. 2020, the FBI gave a briefing to Senator Grassley and Johnson claiming the evidence of Russian interference into their investigation of Hunter Biden. The briefing angered the senators who say it was done to discredit their investigation. And as it's quote right here, the unnecessary FBI briefing provided the Democrats and liberal media the vehicle to spread their false narrative that our work advanced Russian disinformation. So I'm going to skip through some of this real quick because there's one particular part that I want to make sure. Of course, you can go look at the Twitter if you want to get all of the juicy stuff. But all this does is, yes, making sure Michael's covering his bases, showing the receipts of this sort of interference that was being run. But this is the part right here. In the end, the FBI's influence campaign aimed at executives at news media, Twitter, and other social media companies worked. They censored and discredited the Hunter Biden story. By December 2020, Baker and his colleagues even sent a note of thanks to the FBI for its work, who again is working with Twitter. You can see it right here. Jim Baker and the email coming from Jim Baker. The FBI's influence campaign may have been helped by the fact that, and this is the juiciest part of the story, it was paying Twitter millions of dollars for its staff time. I'm happy to report we have collected $3.4 million since October 2019, reports an associate of Jim Baker in early 2021. So they were paying to play. And that was always my question. You remember I did one of my first videos on this topic, and I said, that's what I want to know. You see, fascism is everything within the state, nothing without. Fascism is not guy wearing a red hat or guy that has an R next to their name doing things that I don't like. That's not what fascism is. I would encourage people to read The Doctrine of Fascism by way of Mussolini and Giovanni Gentile. They laid a blueprint. We've covered it on this channel. What happened here is, as it says right there, the FBI's influence campaign, they were paying to play. And let me see this right quick if I can pull this up by way of Elon, because he shared it as well. And he says it pretty much cut and dry. Government paid Twitter millions of dollars to censor from the public. This is what happened. It stinks. Now, I know this happens, and you can say, well, it happened during the time period Trump was president and some of the stuff was going on. Completely irrelevant. I don't even care about that. What I am saying is this. We know, as the reports indicate, Twitter and other forms of social media in some ways, now to the degree of what they paid the other social media companies or news agencies to say certain things. Now, I know people think a lot of this stuff is conspiracy. I mean, people that have been wrote off as conspiracy theorists for a while, when they talk about definitely like the FBI and their criminal behavior and how they have certainly influence within different companies and yada, yada, to not only spread but suppress certain information. But if you say that, you're just a crazy person just talking out of your behind. In a lot of cases, they don't really even try to cover it. It happens. It's kind of prerequisite for what the Federal Bureau of Investigation actually does. Okay, and what they've historically done, as well as the CIA. But it goes to show that certain things, and this is, if you have any takeaway from this, I think this is what it should be. What it shows is that not everything is obviously what it seems, and some things are manufactured. And just because that thing is pushed or it's suppressed, it can go either way, does not mean that there isn't nefarious behavior at play. And it certainly doesn't mean that it's organic, and it certainly doesn't mean that it's without government influence. Some things, they want you to see it. Some things, they don't want you to see it. But either way, you can bet your bottom dollar they are often involved in some kind of way. And this was just about as blatant could be. Criminal activity from a criminal organization. Wherever you're viewing the content, I appreciate you. If you enjoyed it, you may be interested in my comic book company, Rippaverse Comics. Our first book and campaign, ISOM #1, brought in $3.7 million with tens of thousands of satisfied customers. Visit Rippaverse.com to check out our store and stay up to date with the latest campaigns from one of the hottest new comic book companies. Also, my first big step towards a parallel economy was the development of my personal website, ericdjuly.com. This entirely replaced my Patreon. Now, if you enjoy this content, please consider becoming a member over at the website. We have an ever-expanding list of perks for various membership tiers, a forum, and a phone app. Some of these perks will even benefit you if you're fans of the Rippaverse. Anyway, I appreciate you so much for being a supporter and or customer. I even got a little love for my haters.